Here we are once again at the end of another year, and what a great year this has been for movies. However, despite there being so many good movies, there's also been a lot of crap. So I am the Kaiju no Kami, and this is my top 10 worst movies of 2017. Number 10. When the first Underworld came out in like 2002, I really enjoyed it. It was stylish, it was interesting, brought in some new ideas, some mythos. It was just an all-around enjoyable gothic vampire werewolf movie. The next one was kind of the same, not as good as the first, but still kind of cool. The third one was a decent prequel, but they kept going downhill. Now we're at the fifth one, Blood Wars, and this movie was just awful. The fights were boring, the characters were boring. I don't even follow the story anymore. I can't tell if Michael is alive or dead anymore because he keeps dying and coming back. It's so confusing. Either way, this movie was a complete waste of time, which is what you're going to hear a lot in this video. I don't even understand it anymore. Where this series has gone, what's going on. I am completely lost. Whatever. Let's move to the next one. Number 9. 2017 was a pretty solid year for horror movies. However, it doesn't mean we were free from terrible horror movies, as the next one on my list, Bye Bye Man, suggests. I don't even remember anything about this movie. That tells you how bad it was. It was so forgettable. And sometimes I have to wonder, what's worse, a movie that is completely bad because it was horribly made, or a movie that is utterly forgettable? I don't know, but the Bye Bye Man? If I recall, the movie was about getting people to say his name so that his memory would then come back and be able to kill more people as people kept on going. I don't know. If this were a real thing, he would no longer exist because of how forgettable it was. Number 8. I wasn't a fan of The Ring, nor the Japanese version, so I don't know what I was expecting with Rings, but I was kind of hoping there would be something in there. This movie was so boring. There were no scares. All the plot twists were already expected. You knew where things were going to go. Like, there's this one character in it. You're like, when you first meet him, he's up to no good. He probably had something to do with it. And guess what? He had something to do with it. No way! Number 7. Well, it has finally concluded. The Resident Evil series of Alice's story is finally over because it's called The Final Chapter. Nothing returns after the final chapter, right? Of course not. Why would it? Even if you like the other Resident Evil movies, and I really loved the first movie, I liked the second, I hated the third, thought the fourth was an improvement, fifth sucked, this one sucks just as bad. The worst part though about this one is the action is so hard to see. It's shaky cam, like everything is shaking. You can't see what is actually going on. And the worst part is that the camera angles change so many times. It was clearly edited by someone with ADHD. Like seriously, I counted up, I want to say it was the 38-minute mark to the 39-minute mark. The camera angle changed 67 times in that 1 minute time span. That is less than a second per camera angle. Why did you need to do that? How can anyone enjoy a movie that's going... It makes the fight scenes in Bourne look like a masterpiece. It also doesn't help that the ending pretty much sucked. Seriously. If that's how you fix an entire zombie outbreak in the world, why didn't you just do that like whatever years ago it was? Number 6. I don't know why people are praising this movie as one of the year's best, but The Lost City of Z was a snooze fest. In fact, the Z probably stands for snoring. That's how boring this one was. Now don't get me wrong, the acting was great, the cinematography and camera work were gorgeous, there's a lot of great locales and interesting locations, and there are some cool, legitimate scenes to the movie. Ultimately though, it is a boring ass movie. It's so slow moving, it's way too long, and I understand it's based on a real person, but the ending is horrible. That is not a way to end your movie. I don't care that it's based on a real person. You need to do something to make the ending feel like there was a payoff to the rest of the movie. As is, it's just horrible. Number 5. What's worse than adapting an anime into an American movie and whitewashing everything? Adapting a manga and totally not even understanding the concept of the manga. I don't know what was going on with casting, but the dude they got to play Light was more wooden than a forest. He wasn't even acting like Light. His girlfriend was more like Light than he was. The only person that seemed to actually care about his role was the guy that played L. He gave it his all, but there wasn't anything to really give. There was no substance in this movie at all. One of the things that makes this series so good is the psychological battle that goes on between L and Light, or in the later half, near Mellow and Light. This didn't have that. There was no chemistry between the cast, it was just going through the motions. Even William Dafoe seemed to be phoning in Ryuk. And it was kind of cool for him to play Ryuk, it's just, it doesn't matter when he didn't do anything with the role. What they should have done was set this movie after the events of Death Note, the series, and have that Ryuk drops the Death Note into America and sees what an American can do with it since he had so much fun with it in Japan. That would have made for a far more interesting story than what we got here. Number 4. I'm setting the whitewashing aside for Ghost in the Shell. I can deal with that. It would have worked, it kind of worked, even though it was done stupidly. But that's not what I'm talking about. If you know anything about Ghost in the Shell, it's supposed to be a lot of philosophical discussions. It's supposed to go into what happens to machines when parts don't exist anymore, or do machines have souls, all that stuff. This movie had none of this. This was like the director just took his favorite scenes from the manga and the anime and stitched them together with a Saturday morning cookie-cutter cartoon plot. The villain, you know who it is right at the beginning of the movie, so there's no suspense in that. No, like, oh my god, he's the villain? No, it's, he's the villain. Okay, I know where this is going. This movie was not the least bit thought-provoking, which is what Ghost in the Shell is supposed to be. Also, if you're a Section 9 fan, I am so sorry. Ishikawa, Borma, and Pazu don't even get named once. Togasa is no longer the rookie young Japanese family man, and he is now an old single Chinese guy. At least I think he's single. They don't really talk about his family, which is one of the defining characteristics of Togasa. There's no tachikomas. The only reason this movie is number 4 on my list is I did love Aramaki and Bato. Bato wasn't 100% accurate, but I could get behind him. He had the personality. Aramaki was just awesome all around. Beat Takeshi was wonderful and was the saving grace of this film. And the soundtrack was pretty good. Number 3. Oh my god. Valerian was so damn boring. This director, the guy who has done Leon the Professional and The Fifth Element, and is supposedly a big fan of the comic book series that Valerian was based on, made one of the worst movies I have ever sat through. Well, I guess it's not number 1, so it can't be one of the worst movies I have ever sat through. But you know what I mean, especially if you have seen it. There is no chemistry between the cast. They've got the guy who played Green Goblin, Harry Osborn, in The Amazing Spider-Man, teamed up with the wooden caricature who played Enchantress in Suicide Squad. They have them together. Guess what they don't do? Anything. You could glue pieces of wood together and they would stick better than what these two did. This movie is full of random scenes that are either pointless or drag on way too long. Like there's a scene when Valerian goes into this place and we have like a 5-minute dance scene of some woman dancing around that changes bodies and because she's a shapeshifter. That scene served absolutely no purpose. We didn't need that. The opening sequence was way too long. This movie was just horrendous to sit through. In fact, I think I did actually sleep through it a little bit. And yet, it isn't number 1. Because there's still a lot worse. Number 2. I don't know what Guy Ritchie was thinking when he made King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, but good God, he needs to hire new editors or just don't. King Arthur does not work as a top, stylish action movie. It also doesn't help that the plot made no sense, it was cliche, It was also boring. The music didn't fit. The editing was horrible. Like, King Arthur is actually in two places at one time in the movie. He's on a boat at one point, and he's on an island fighting snakes at the same point. I'm assuming there were supposed to be two different events going on at two different times, but the way they edited them together made them seem like they were happening at the same time. And then when Arthur was a child growing up into an adult, in like the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, they had this really weird montage scene. It just doesn't work. The music was horrible for it. It didn't feel like it belonged there. The montage was so rushed, didn't make sense, didn't work. It was just a mess of a film, and apparently Guy Ritchie wanted to do 5 or 6 more movies for this. Yeah, no. No. You didn't even get the freaking mythology right, dude. Morgan Le Fay is supposed to be Mordred's mother. Morgan Le Fay is Arthur's sister. How can Mordred be the villain if he's supposed to be younger than Arthur? Because he shouldn't even have been born at that point in time. I'm gonna just stop there because thinking about this movie is making me mad. And I have enough anger for the dishonorable mention and number 1. Honorable mention. The reason this is a dishonorable mention is because it was a made-for-TV movie, so I can't really count it as a movie, especially because it was a musical remake of A Christmas Story. Why would you make this into a musical? What makes it even worse is, first of all, this is supposed to be like the 1940s. They don't look like they're living in the 1940s. The one thing that was great about the original movie is everything looks dirty. They look like they're in a middle class to poor neighborhood. In this movie, everything is sparkly clean, bright, colorful. Everything looks like everyone is a rich person. Why? It also doesn't help that the whole purpose of this story is Ralphie wanting a BB gun. Guess what is not seen the entire movie until Christmas Day? His BB gun. In all of his big Broadway-like dream sequences, he never actually has the gun. And then when he does get the BB gun, they don't actually show him shoot it. The scene cuts to his mother in the house, hearing him shoot himself. But no, he doesn't actually shoot it. They don't show any of it. We never actually see him use it. So why even bother if you're not even going to adapt properly the key portion of the story? Ugh. Also, the guy that got to play the father was terrible. He didn't have the grumpiness. Did he even watch A Christmas Story? Because he didn't feel like the father at all. And the father would not burst out in a song. So I don't know why they even did that here. He is the one character that should not have had a song. I will give them praise that they did get to bully well, Scott Farkus. He looked just like Scott Farkus. Of course, he didn't actually beat anyone up in this movie, and all the scenes, all 2 scenes, were relegated to the schoolyard instead of down the street in an alleyway on their way home. Why bother? Oh, and they, for some reason, in the middle of the movie, have Hugh Jackman and the cast of The Greatest Showman break out into song because that made sense. All I thought about this entire movie was the adaptation of the Christmas Carol that was done in Scrooge with a live Christmas Eve performance with musical singers, Tiny Tim that does gymnastics, and all that stuff. Ugh. This movie sucked. Why? The absolute worst was a movie that I hated the more I thought about it, and that was Ridley Scott's Alien Alien Covenant. Might as well have been called Blade Runner since it was more about the machines rather than the creatures. I don't know where to start. The cast is boring. They're stupid. They go to this alien world and not even wear freaking helmets and stuff. They just go out there, oh, we can breathe out here. Okay, this is a good idea. Da, 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 da. Why? Why? It's so cliche. It is basically does everything the previous Alien movies have already done and better. If you were a fan of Prometheus like I am, prepare to be given the middle finger. They killed Shaw off screen between movies. And they wiped out the entire plot points of Prometheus in this movie between movies. There was no payoff for Prometheus. Everything that Prometheus did wrong, this movie did 100 times worse. This movie didn't provide any answers for what Prometheus gave, it just threw on new questions and did it in the most cliche, boring, generic way possible. Apparently Fox has canceled the sequels because they're being bought by Disney. Thank you, Fox. I am happy for that, and if that's because of Disney, then this merger is already doing good things. Ridley Scott, retire now while you have some dignity. I can go on and on more about this movie, but I will end this list here. Happy New Year, everyone, and check out my best movies of 2017. Bye.